Been together so long we can't pretend. Remember the way we used to move, dance all night like young lovers do. Your heart is changing. Now we don't dance like we used to. Silent disco on the floor, baby. Mr. DJ, he'll get me through. When the beat's done, you can't save me, baby. Smoke and mirrors, pretty lights. Another runaway city boy getting too high. But boys like you tell pretty lies. The 5 a.m. low in your eyes says your heart is.
This is Broad Radio. For you, by you. Broad Radio. Here for more.
Hello and welcome to Broad Radio. I'm Jo Stanley and my co-host today is the delightful Angela Pippos. Hello, Ange.
Hi, Jo. Happy International Women's Day for yesterday.
Yes, for yesterday, but why don't we just embrace it for all of this week? It is our International Women's Day show, which comes with great celebration, but also renewed commitment from all of us here to continue fighting for gender equality. And we are today, Ange, putting international into International Women's Day because we're going to cross to Kenya, if you don't mind.
I'm very excited about this. We can't travel in real life, so it's good to go places virtually.
Absolutely, and thanks to the magic of the internet, we are going to be meeting a Melbourne woman living in Nairobi who is running a handmade furniture making business and having real impact for local artisans and artists there. Also, CEO of Diversity Council Australia, Annese, is joining us to take us through the myth busting that they're doing around family violence and the workplace. For the laughs, we're going to be joined by comedian Diana Nguyen. We need a good laugh these days. Absolutely. Let's embrace that. And we're going to be meeting a wonderful Melbourne grandmother who is taking us through International Women's Day over the years. She's an amazing woman. We can't wait to meet her. That's right after this. Broad Radio is proudly supported by Chemist Warehouse. Chemist Warehouse, great savings every day. Now, Ange, before we begin, I must mention, please go to our YouTube channel at Broad Radio Oz and like and subscribe. It's really important. You're not going to miss an episode or any of the highlights if you do that. Head over to YouTube at Broad Radio Oz. Now, Ange, International Women's Day, what does it mean for you?
Well, I've got to say, the theme this year of Choose to Challenge just feels a little bit light, a little underdone, given what the country is talking about at the moment. And I, for one, feel terribly let down by our leaders. And I feel like the response to the allegations of sexual violence have been woefully inadequate. So I'm feeling a little bit, like Choose to Challenge is not really my theme this year. I'm a bit more motivated to march.
Yeah.
I'm going to March the 15th. I'm going to be there in the heart of Melbourne because I feel like we've got to send a very strong message that this is just not acceptable on any level. So for me, it's like you said at the start, it is a celebration of how far we've come, and we have come a long way. We absolutely have, but it's also a chance to talk about what else needs to be done to make life equal, because it's not at the moment. Doesn't matter what sphere you're in, women still don't have true equality. So it's about both.
Yeah, I do often feel a little overwhelmed when I think about the amount of work still yet to be done. And yes, Monday the 15th of March, I hope hundreds of thousands of people, men and women, take to the streets with real fury, because you're right, Ange, at the moment we're not getting the kind of leadership that we need in this country to instigate real change and for people to be safe I mean, that's as simple as that, right? But I also feel overwhelmed when I know things like, women account for just over a third of all managers in major companies. There's only 10 female CEOs in the ASX 200 companies. Women are earning less because of the gender pay gap. And of course, one woman a week dies at the hands of a current or former partner. These are things that are absolutely unacceptable and must change.
Yes, but anger can be a useful thing, because you think about the women's movement of the 1970s, it was anger that drove that effective action and that change. Anger about not being able to control their own bodies, about not having equal pay and not feeling safe. The same sorts of things that we talk about today, but it was anger that got them marching. So I think it's really important that we harness this feeling that we've got and turn it into something meaningful. And that's a good starting place on the 15th.
Yes, and we'd love to hear from you today, actually, if you are watching or listening live, either on Facebook or on YouTube. Give us a comment. Let us know what you're feeling around International Women's Day. Do you have anger? What are the things that you would like to see change? Are you going to be marching on Monday the 15th? Because it's happening all around the country, and we'll give you some details a little later on as to how you can engage with that. So, do let us know how you are feeling today around all the things that you feel, need to change. And that's even things like unpaid labour, the amount of unpaid labour that women do. Or, I'll tell you one of my absolute bugbears, Ange, it's gender bias in medicine and medical research. I am enraged by how women are overlooked, ignored, how we're not listened to. For everywhere, from GPs right through to the fact that, research is not done with a female body in mind. I mean, it's just that kind of bias really enrages me.
And that is, an unconscious and conscious bias that keeps women out of that space. And for me, I've got an optimistic story, because one of the things that really has annoyed me and continues to annoy me, it's the lack of public statues dedicated to women, right? Yes. And people say, why is that such a big deal? Well, public statues give us an insight into how society views its women and men. And if you don't see statues of women, it just gives the impression, it sends the message that the achievements of women are not as important as those achievements of men. And it gives a very skewed version of history, right? Because women have been there throughout history, but they've been ignored. So statues are a way of addressing that imbalance. So when you rock up to the statue with your kids or with friends and you talk about that woman, you fill in that gap in your knowledge of history. It's so important. So finally, I'm a step closer to hashtag Betty in bronze. Betty Wilson, I know I've spoken about her before. I'm obsessed with this story. She played cricket for Australia in the 1950s. She was an all-rounder. She was an exceptional cricketer. Well, I believe that we should have a statue of Betty in Melbourne somewhere, whether it's outside the MCG or perhaps the Junction Oval. We need to have Betty in bronze. The good news is Cricket Australia has now announced a working group to decide who will have immortalised in bronze and where they'll be around the country, which women cricketers. So for so many years, I've been the self-appointed spokeswoman when it comes to this. Now I belong to an actual working group.
It's official.
Gives me lots more credibility.
Yes.
More structure, which I need, because the way that I went for the statue in 2018 was I just jumped into the deep end, right? And I said to the president of the Melbourne Cricket Club, we need a statue of Betty Wilson now outside the MCG. So the good thing about having Cricket Australia behind me, the might of Cricket Australia, is it gives it the structure to go forward and get lots of statues around the country of women who have played cricket at the highest level. It's good.
It's amazing. And I have to say, so you're right, there are many, many optimistic pieces of news and moments of change over the last year and a couple of years. You know, let's not be completely downtrodden. And one of the things that you have worked really hard, and I mean, you know, we've seen your documentary, which is amazing. Check it out on ABC iView, The Record, about the T20 World Cup last year, where, you know, the women cricketers managed to get 86,100 people at the MCG.
74.
And 74 at the MCG. And now this endeavour to get our first statue of a woman cricketer somewhere in this country. I really want to commend you, Ange. You work really hard to make a difference for women in sport. And, you know, this is just another evidence of that, of how hard you're working to make a difference. And you're right, it changes the language, it changes the conversation, and it educates people. It's so important.
Thanks, Jo. That means a lot for you to say that. Now, in 2018, when I tried, I hit a few roadblocks. What it shows is that 3 years later, you know, other people have caught up with the conversation and they're ready to do something about it. So you got to stick with it, you know, perseverance and tenacity. And I just can't wait to say to you, meet me at the Betty Wilson statue. That's what I want to say.
Oh, look, congratulations to you, Ange.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Well, we love celebrating women and their achievements here and all around the world. So let's cross now to Nairobi in Kenya, where we are going to meet Sara Reeves, who is the founder of Love Artisan, a handmade furniture company making huge, beautiful furniture and having great impact. Hello there, Sara.
Hi, Jo. Hi, Ange. It's a pleasure to be on your International Women's Day series.
Well, happy International Women's Day. I believe we've snuck in by about 30 minutes. It's still International Women's Day in Nairobi.
It is, yep.
Now, I know you're a Melbourne girl. You were working in tourism. You ended up eventually moving to Nairobi, and you've ended up making furniture. How did that happen? What was the instigator for moving into creating furniture there?
Yeah, it's been quite the adventure. I've lived in Kenya for 9 years now, and as you said, I worked in tourism. I had a career in tourism that brought me to Kenya in 2012. And what happened was that tourism in Kenya went through a few volatile years. 2013, 2014, it became hard to make a living, and so I started hustling. I started to do some events. I whatever it was to pay the rent. I started a beekeeping company, which I have a real passion for until this day. So I was really just doing what I could to survive. And the instigator for making furniture was that I moved into an apartment that didn't have any furniture. And the department store furniture is really quite expensive in Nairobi. It's imported furniture. I couldn't afford that. And I thought, well, I mean, how hard could it be to make furniture? And it was a lot harder than I thought. So I had no idea. I mean, sometimes that's just life doesn't tell you until later when you're too far in. So myself and the security guard actually went and bought like shipping pallets and crates and started making for my house a bed and a bookshelf and coffee tables. And then friends of mine said, well, can you make me this pallet sofa and can you make this for me? And so we started doing this from my living room and selling it to friends. And to be honest, it was terrible. Like, terrible quality. I don't know how we charged people money for it, but we did. And that was kind of the very beginning, the very genesis of my furniture making journey, which was in 2016. And then it's just grown from strength to strength from there. I mean, I had to close that down. That was happening in my living room, but eventually I was able to start my own company, Love Artisan, in 2017. And two things about that. One is that the security guard that started making the furniture with me from day one has walked that journey with me. So we still work together to this day. He gave up security. He's now making furniture. And number two, I still have a bed made out of tomato crates, which I urgently need to upgrade. But yeah. That was the beginning. And now you can definitely spend your money quite confidently on the furniture that we make. We've come a long way.
Oh, well, it's beautiful furniture. Ange, we were admiring it before. I think we've got some images from your Instagram. Love Artisan, check it out on Insta. But yeah, some of the furniture is magnificent.
Thank you.
Look, you work with such beautiful fabrics. They're stunning. They're absolutely stunning. But your company is about more than that, isn't it? So perhaps tell us about the local furniture makers. How have you changed their lives?
Yeah, so thanks for the question, Ange. So basically how it is in Nairobi is that, not just Nairobi, in Kenya in general, there's a lot of unemployment or informal employment, which means just, not secure employment, no benefits, working job to job. And in fact, it's, maybe up to 40-50% of our population here is working in some sort of informal work. So when I started in the furniture industry, even on the street where I work, which is the largest furniture making street, it's home to more than 2,000 people earning a living there. And it's kind of a self-taught, self-regulated industry. And when I started Love Artisan, I thought, look, we have so much potential in our workforce here. And if we could just harness that potential and tap into it and give guidance and investment and attention to this, and really give people, dignified and sustainable employment whilst making really good quality furniture, and also showcasing, some of the beautiful textiles that the continent has. So that was really the impetus. I became very passionate, and still am, about just the impact that we can have at that sort of grassroots level of our economy. So that's really, I think, what drives me and what drives the brand. As you said, it's handmade furniture, so it's a very personal thing, and you need to love what you do, because I think it shows in the furniture that you make. So, yeah.
And what about some of the people that work with you and the artists? I imagine that you must get to know each other very well, and you know their families, and what kinds of stories do they bring with them?
Well, I think, that's one of the interesting things, is that sometimes when a foreigner or an expat comes to Kenya, not just Kenya, but there can be this idea that you're saving somebody or whatever it is. But the fact is, to run a business here, like anywhere, you need to know the people that you work with. You need to know them as individuals. What are their desires? What are their motivations? What are their goals? Yes, I do know everyone's family. We're 12 people. We all work in the same one room, so we really do have to get along. But yeah, we're a very close, tight-knit bunch. I think I'm really blessed. I have to say, I'm really grateful that the strength of the team that we have really does propel our company forward. So, but you really can't underestimate, even as a consumer, like the impact of a single purchase from a company like ours, which kind of supports and impacts that, I'll sort of say, the grassroots level of the economy. $1 spent in that environment just really goes so far, whether it be us who is making the furniture, but there are so many people involved in that value chain of making even just a single chair. And it's impacting people that don't necessarily have steady employment. So those decisions that we make as consumers every day add up to the point of, like, can this mother educate her children, or, those types of things. So we really can't underestimate the impact that we have as consumers and where we choose to spend our money.
And Sarah, sometimes in business, in striving for targets and profit and all of that, in the hurly-burly of business, that human connection can be lost, can't it? And the storytelling gets lost. That's really important to you, isn't it, with your company?
Yeah, and I think it's probably more important than the profit. So I don't know what my accountant has to say about that. But certainly my drive for the company is not, it's not really profit driven. To me, I think profit is always an outcome of serving a need or solving a problem and so forth. So to me, it's really making sure that we're able to harness the potential that we have. And like in my biggest mission, my biggest, wildest dreams, I want to help, how can I say, I want to help put Kenya on the map. That sounds a bit too conceited. I don't mean it to be that way, but I want to help change the narrative that, like, we can make really great quality furniture coming out of Kenya. We can make funky, original furniture. And I think that we can challenge people's assumptions of what's possible.
Sarah, it is, of course, International Women's Day still in Kenya, and we're holding on to it. I mean, for the rest of the week, let's not stop celebrating women and our incredible achievements and stop fighting for equality. But of course, it's a global event. But I do think that we here in Australia can maybe feel a bit disconnected from other women around the world. So I wonder if you could share with us, what would the women of Kenya want us to know about the challenges they might face and what sorts of things they celebrate?
Sure. I mean, I think, there's a saying here that if you educate a woman or if you empower a woman, then you empower the entire community, the entire society. And I really think it does hold true. I think the women of Africa, not just Kenya, but are really the backbones of family, of community, and ultimately of economy as well. So I think they play a crucial role. And thankfully, there's been more focus now on the importance of educating girls and including women in the workforce. For us, our management team are all women. But one thing I'm really proud of in terms of, because it is a real challenge here. I mean, women are often not able to get into employment as easily or stable employment as easily. They can be exploited at times as well. But one thing I'm really proud of is that we work with an organization called Clean Start, which helps women coming out of the prison system to reintegrate back into their societies. There's sensitization about stigma and so forth, and become contributing members of their community again. So we were their pilot workshop. One of our team members, Lynn, was a former prisoner. And this year we're hoping to bring on more women because one of the things here in Kenya, there's no real state role that helps people coming out of the prison system. And often in prison here, I mean, many people are victims of circumstance. So I feel really good about giving women just that step back into society and a way to contribute in a meaningful way. I'm really excited to actually expand that side of the business this year.
That sounds great. I love that. Now, just finally from me, it feels like you've been led across the other side of the world to fulfill your purpose. What advice would you give the rest of us who are striving to fulfill our purpose as well in whatever fields of endeavour we're in?
Well, that's a good question. I think, when I first moved here, my mum said, but you're only going for 2 years, right? Like, okay. Now we're 9 years in, she stopped asking me, but she's coming over for Christmas this year. So I think one of the beautiful things, the joys that Kenya has opens me up to, opened my life up to, is just, how can I say, the expansion that I've had from a personal growth point of view when I have allowed myself to not just follow the path that maybe in my career I thought I was going to take. So when you're open to opportunity, and then, life just keeps bringing amazing things to you. And I mean, my life in Kenya in the last 9 years has taken me on a journey that I couldn't have imagined. There's no way I thought I was making furniture. I mean, I did one semester of woodworking in year 10 when I was 16, and that's about the only experience I had. So I think maybe just the question is to allow ourselves to be more than what's written on a piece of paper, or to just keep that space open for, as they say, where the magic happens, and you don't necessarily know what it is, but if you live in this kind of state of allowance for, some crazy things to come in, some adventures, whatever, or just being prepared to learn new things, being prepared to step out of your comfort zone. To me, it's been difficult. I can't say there hasn't been challenges, but
Oh no, we've lost Sarah there. I don't know what's happened, but unfortunately I think maybe her internet has dropped out. We did so well crossing to Nairobi, Ange.
We did, and great advice. It was about just stepping out of your comfort zone, right? And not following the script that you think has been written for you. So we got the gist of that. It was it was a good note to end it on.
It really was. And I love how she said life doesn't tell you how it's going to unfold or how hard it will be. You just go into it and then you go, oh my God, where am I now? How did this happen? So it was so fantastic to catch up with Sara Reeves there, and check out her Instagram, Love Artisan. I don't think they're yet exporting those beautiful pieces of furniture, but I can't wait till hopefully she can expand into the rest of the world. Well,
I want the blue chair.
Do you?
Yes.
Well, I won't fight you for it. I'll take the lovely dusty pink, okay? We'll have more Broad Radio after this. That they do. And so on this International Women's Day, we welcome CEO of Diversity Council Australia, Lisa Annese. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning.
Lisa, I think you would agree that there has been growing anger in Australia over the last few weeks, as it has been revealed with the rolling headlines, the culture in Parliament of harassment and abuse. And I think that we're angry because it feels like nothing ever changes. It feels as though we've been hearing these stories for a very long time in many different organisations and many different industries, not just Parliament. And so I want to ask you, why don't you think it's changing? And how is this related to gender equality? Because there is a very well-researched link between this kind of harassment and abuse and gender equality, isn't there?
I mean, as to why, it's such a good question, as to why we are still having these conversations, as to why these sorts of miscarriages of justice are being experienced by women in every workplace, in women's private lives. I mean, I don't have the answer to that. What I will say is we do know that all harassment and violence against women starts with gender inequality, and that if you focus on gender equality as a guiding principle, you can then work on creating a culture in which women can expect to be treated with dignity and respect. And that's a starting point.
Okay, so hi Lisa. Let's dispel a few myths around domestic and family violence, because you've just released a document in association with Our Watch called Mythbusters. Let's begin with the workplace. What do you say to people who say to you it has nothing to do with the workplace?
Well, when individuals experience family or domestic violence, we know that 2/3 of those women who experience that are actually employed. So even though the behaviours are not happening on work premises, you're employing, most organisations are employing someone who has those experiences. And if you're an employer of any conceivable size, it is statistically inconceivable that you don't have women in your workplace who are victims of domestic and family violence. And so by its very nature, it then becomes an issue that the workplace has an opportunity to be able to address and perhaps provide support and provide an environment of safety and security for that individual. So whilst I suppose it's not a matter of business for a workplace, it's an enormous opportunity for workplaces to get involved to the extent that they can to support an individual.
Which leads me to one of the other myths and a further question to that. You've put here a myth, we aren't therapists or lawyers, there's nothing we can do. I imagine a lot of employers might think, well, even if I'm aware if this is taking place, what can I do? What actually is within our power?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's completely correct. I mean, it's unlikely that as an outsider to that situation, you're going to be able to stop the violence. But what you can do is be present for that individual. We know from individuals who experience violence or indeed sexual assault or sexual harassment that the disclosure, their first disclosure of that will predict future disclosures. So if someone reveals something to somebody else in a workplace context and it's met with silence and walls, then they are very likely to keep that to themselves and never seek out appropriate help. If someone is met with an open heart, with someone who can listen, with someone who can be present, be with that person, then that might just be enough to enable that person to continue down the path to receiving the appropriate help. So whilst you can't actually address the offending behaviour, you can be there for somebody, you can listen, you can direct someone to resources. If you're a workplace that takes this matter seriously, you'll know what the resources are, and if not, it's not that hard to find out. And then you can also provide that environment of safety for that person. So there's a lot you can do, which can make a huge difference to someone, even if you don't actually have any opportunity to change that person's individual circumstances.
Lisa, I want to ask you about perhaps a broader myth, and it's one that we hear over and over again, and that is if the woman was in real danger, she would just leave. Perhaps can you speak to the complexity around just leaving? It's not that easy.
No, it's absolutely not that easy. And notwithstanding the fact the most dangerous time for a woman, the time when her life is most at risk and most under threat, is at the point of leaving or ending a relationship. That's when you're most likely to become a victim of homicide. And so they're the risks of leaving that obviously individuals are weighing up. But then what you also have to understand is the pattern of coercive control that's happened to that individual that might have eroded their agency around getting away. Notwithstanding, there are also other factors. We know a lot of women. I'm involved in an organisation at the moment now who recognise that a barrier sometimes to women leaving is that they may not be able to bring their pets into shelters, for example. And so there's some work being done with an organisation around making, women's shelters pet friendly. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why it's difficult for someone to leave a situation that is harmful for them. And one of the big risks is that it will become even more harmful in those initial months and years of leaving.
Lisa, we're talking about a general culture a lot in our workplaces at the moment because of what has unfolded in Parliament. And I wonder what advice you might give to a workplace or an employer if they feel that there's a culture of gender inequality and maybe even are alert to a perpetrator being in their workplace. Because you can't assume that no one that you have in your workplace might be actioning this kind of family violence.
Yes, it's a good point. And I suppose I need to clarify as well that the behaviours that are being discussed now about having taken place in the Parliament, in Parliament House, are behaviours around sexual harassment and sexual violence, and that domestic and family violence is a bigger conversation. Having said that, it's all about the culture that enables this kind of behaviour to be pervasive. And we know that all violence, all harassment starts with disrespect. Not all disrespect will end in violence and harassment, but all violence and harassment starts with disrespect. So if we can stop it at the start, if we can create environments where there is a culture of respect and dignity afforded to individuals, and that will go a long way. With respect to the idea that workplaces think that they may not have perpetrators, if 2/3 of women who are victims of violence are employed and someone is perpetrating that violence, and chances are that those perpetrators are also in employment. And so even if you don't know who those perpetrators are, if you are a workplace of any reasonable size, again, it's statistically very likely that you also have perpetrators of violence in your workplace as employees. And so even if you don't know who you're messaging to, you might just touch on the right ears with your messaging.
So that's about establishing a culture in which we call out gender inequality?
Yes, gender inequality is a really complex. It's a complex system of inequity. It's about direct behaviour that might degrade, humiliate, offend, or harass a man or a woman, which is gendered. It's also about a lack of opportunity. It's about things like paying people differently for doing work of equal value. It's about having unconscious barriers for women to fully participate at work, to be promoted into positions of leadership and power. It's around punishing people for working flexibly because they have small children, and that happens all the time in an unconscious way. And it's also about not enabling men, for example, to be active parents. And so, we know that it's much harder for men to get access to workplace flexibility and still be taken seriously in their career. So as a result, they don't go down that path at all. Well, that has massive ramifications for the partners of those men. Because someone has to raise children, someone has to look after children. It should be a joint responsibility between two parents if you're a heterosexual couple that is still together. And it actually benefits children to have two engaged parents. So that's a massive issue where there's huge inequality. And it's inequality that's often framed in the language of choice. But if you really break it down, there's not a whole lot of choice that's happening. People feel as though they have a lack of choice, and so they make decisions based on their limited choices. If there's genuine choice and people choose to work in a particular way that excludes them from employment because they've made a personal decision, that's fantastic, that's brilliant. But actually, that's usually not what we see. We often hear men and women talk about the cost of childcare only in the terms of a woman's income, which is unbelievable. You never think of any other family expense in terms of one partner's responsibility. But that's how our biases work. They're that strong.
Yes.
Lisa, we spoke about leadership at the start of the show, and we need strong leadership here to address this scourge on our society. And it doesn't appear that we're getting that in the political sphere, at least. I'm reminded of a great quote from Annabel Crabb, and she said this in 2015, political journalist Annabel Crabb. If a man got killed by a shark every week, we'd probably arrange to have the ocean drained. And that has stuck in my head. How can we make our political leaders see that this is the most important issue for our society?
It's an absolute national emergency. Almost 2 women are murdered every week at the hands of their domestic partner or intimate ex-partner. And like we discussed earlier, they're most likely to be killed when they are leaving that relationship. How can we? You know what? Women are screaming from the rooftops about this, and we have been for a really long time. Every media outlet yesterday during International Women's Day was discussing these kinds of issues, and then people forget about it. What we need is for this to be considered a mainstream issue, not a women's issue. This is an issue that actually affects every individual, and it requires absolute political will. It requires everyone to treat it as a national emergency. Gendered violence is a very unique type of violence that has, appalling outcomes. And we're only talking about the women who end up murdered. It's not even to mention the women who end up in hospital every day, the kinds of women who never seek help, the sorts of psychological scars that are left on the women and the children who experience or witness this sort of behaviour. I mean, I don't know what more women can do here because women are doing a lot. I think it's time that the fellas stepped up.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And I'm really grateful to you for stating it so clearly and plainly there, Lisa. We are all planning to march on Monday the 15th, March for Justice, and we hope hundreds of thousands of women and men take to the streets around the country and send that very clear message. And it's up to us to keep the conversation alive in as many mainstream opportunities as possible, because you're right, Lisa, it will disappear if we don't keep it going. Thank you so much, CEO of Diversity Council Australia, Lisa. I know that we're going to be having you on the show ongoingly over the next year or so, and we're really pleased to have you a part of Broad Radio.
A pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And we'll have more Broad Radio after this.
My workout routine comes with me wherever I go, and so does Bondi Protein. It gives me the post-workout nutrients I need. Fuel your body with Australian-made Bondi Protein.
Broad Radio. Talking inspo we love, info we need, and sharing more of us. Watch and listen live every Tuesday 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time at broadradio.com.au, or find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube and LinkedIn at Broad Radio Oz. Talk to us live. Call on 1300 8 Broad. Catch up on demand anytime, anywhere, every time, everywhere. On the train, we'll be here. 2 a.m. existential crisis? We've got you covered. Broad Radio. Here for more.
Oh, I think it's time for a laugh, Ange, don't you?
Absolutely. It is overdue.
It is overdue. It's a tricky time. I think we're all feeling very overwhelmed and quite exhausted by the feeling in the air. But let's celebrate life and let's celebrate a laugh. And so we're very pleased to welcome to the show comedian Diana Nguyen. Hello, Diana.
Hello.
Diana, I know that you are getting ready for the Melbourne International Comedy Festival and you're doing a show called Chasing Keanu Reeves. Are you literally chasing Keanu? Does he know this? Should he be worried?
I've been chasing him for 2 years and the comedy festival was cancelled last year. So it's been in the oven for too long. So I can't wait to just to feel him somewhere in the audience, hopefully.
What do you mean, though? What do you actually mean about chasing Keanu Reeves?
Well, if we go a bit deeper, the premise of Chasing Keanu Reeves is 2.5 years ago, I saw a meme of him sitting on a bench eating food, looking quite sad, and that turned me on. I was so turned on by this man being so available to his emotions. So I was thinking, like, what if we could chase like Keanu? And he's got this weird cult behind him. People admire him. His movies aren't all that great, but he's got this really great human in him. So I'm chasing that human, I guess. That's the idea of the show.
Yeah, I don't know him personally, which is a tragedy. But I think what it is he doesn't appear to be lost in showbiz like so many other people with that sort of profile in Hollywood movies. They seem to have, I mean, there's an expression for it, but I won't say it. But they are lost in showbiz. So what other traits do you think you're looking for in a fella?
My fella, I think we've all gone through the lockdown and I'm from Melbourne. I think I want intimacy. I think I've kind of grown up in my teenage and 20s going really fast and trying to find love really fast. And also the physicality is also fast. But I think with last year, I really learnt that by, the simple touch or a kiss is also, you don't need the rabbit show. So yeah, I'm really asking for that intimacy and that slowness and an open man who's willing to communicate how he feels, and it doesn't need to be rushed. And I feel like that's something I'm looking forward in my next partner. I
like that you point out this notion of being emotional in a person, and I feel really sad. And we've kind of, and you and I have talked about this a lot, about how men often feel like they're not allowed to share that side of themselves. now with all this talk about gender equality, isn't that we want for men that they feel like that they can be emotionally available?
Yeah, I think the times are changing, and I hope that, Keanu Reeves sets that kind of tone. But I think for both relationships to work, we need to listen to both sides, and that takes time. So, I know you had your guest on before talking about women not being heard, and especially being International Women's Day yesterday. I think that conversation, and we've seen it in the politics in the last 2 weeks, is that for so long women haven't been heard, but we need to meet in the middle, I guess, if we want progress and change. So, yeah.
And that's right, Joe. This is the thing that often gets lost in the conversation about feminism, is that it's also really good for men because it unshackles them from one particular type of masculinity where they have to be unemotional and so stoic, and they can't show their feelings. So it's actually good for both sexes to have different versions of masculinity and femininity and not be so stuck with one. So I would think, not that I'm a social commentator, that would make the jungle out there a little bit more enticing for women if men are able to show other types of masculinity and not the one that they've had society's been telling them to show for centuries.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. Now, but Ange, you're raising a boy, gorgeous Francis, who's 7, is he?
Just turned 8.
Just turned 8. And, I suppose this is the opportunity for us as parents to raise the next generation of boys to perhaps be more Keanu Reeves-like, if we're holding him up as the most available man on the planet. So there's a great opportunity there, and also a great, I suppose, responsibility around that. But that is my segue, Diana, to the fact that you, as you are in the process of finding your emotionally available bloke, you're also taking matters into your own hands and planning on having a child on your own this year.
Yeah, well, that's, what else am I meant to do this year?
Sure.
Shows are getting cancelled. We've got lockdown. It's kind of like a little side project, I guess. But yeah, I've had to ask myself some really serious questions. It's like, I've known that I've wanted to be a mum for so long. Like all my friends know it. I know it. My mum knows it. My sister knows it. And I'm going on dates and I know what I want, but how do you tell this man across the table that you know what you want without freaking them out? And I'm tired of being apologetic, of knowing what I want. I've been given advice, you should wait on the 3rd date. But then, in the first date, I already find out that he's had a vasectomy or, he doesn't want children. And I don't want that relationship with a man that doesn't want to bring a child into the world. So I guess I've really had to dig deep into me and think about, like, am I able to raise a child of my own? And I can. And so that's been the big conversations I've had with myself. I'm so tired of thinking about it. And I think it's just easy just to do it. I really think it's just easier just to put it in and just get with it.
Oh, I absolutely go for it. You should go for it. And I've had girlfriends who have done that as well, have taken matters into their own hands. But what you're saying resonates with me because I was rocketing towards the age of 40 when I went furniture shopping on a very hot Melbourne day, and I chatted up an Englishman, and I had a one-night stand that's still going 13 years later. And I had to raise the question of children really early on in our relationship. And yes, it freaked him out, but I kept going and I just talked him into it.
I love that.
So all power to you.
It's not always that easy to talk someone into it. Diana, are you going to use IVF or what's your plan? You did say something to me about a turkey baster. I did.
And I did say to you, he said to you, is it appropriate to talk about turkey bastering? But again, I look, traditionally, my mum has, I've suggested IVF to my mum, and she said, just have sex and don't leave, don't move, don't, just do it for free. In my day, we did it for free. She doesn't get the concept of paying loads of money for IVF. Right. But I am open to options. I'm not sure if I want the hormones in my body to get to that state of having a baby. So I am doing research. I'm going to try and get through the comedy festival first before, attacking the new project. But I am open. I've been asking my friends, gay friends, who might be interested. I'm very interested in co-parenting. I think co-parenting is an excellent scenario, so that, you get your 3 days off from your child. And, for me, it's I just don't want to just, raise a child. I would love to carry a child. I think it's a wonderful science experiment to have in your body. And, we'll see what happens, eh?
Oh, well, we wish you all the best with that, Diana.
Yes.
I think it's truly a very, very common challenge for so many women. And what I'm really inspired by is you just saying, well, why I'm sick of waiting and I'm sick of being apologetic. I agree. Let's not be apologetic. Ugh. It's so exhausting to constantly be making apologies for ourselves. So good luck with it, Diana.
Thank you.
Yeah, and make sure you can get along and see Diana in the Melbourne International Comedy Festival,
Yes.
Chasing Keanu Reeves. You can get tickets at comedyfestival.com.au. I can't wait to see that show. And, if you do meet Keanu Reeves, I would like to say hello to him also, just to chat in a bar.
And me too.
Yeah. We'll have more Broad Radio after this.
I'm in a new strategy.
Welcome back to our celebration of International Women's Day. We love that it's a day, well, actually it's a week, really, sometimes 10 days, in which we celebrate how far we have come towards gender equality, but also remember that it is a challenge to keep going. Don't give up. Don't you reckon, Ange?
That's right. We're not there yet. We are edging closer, but we're not there yet.
No, but there are people all around the world, women and men, who are celebrating International Women's Day, and we're connecting with different versions of that kind of celebration. And we just love this particular one. Andrea McGinley has been celebrating International Women's Day with her local community since the early 90s, and she joins us now. Hello, Andrea.
Hello, Jo. Hello, Angela.
Tell us, what is it that you do with your community?
We meet, we share coffee, we talk about what's happening, what's going on, what we're thinking about. We celebrate births, deaths, marriages, divorces. We've been meeting since '88. We don't just meet for International Women's Day. This group of friends meets casually and together at a coffee shop once a month. Some of us meet in between the month, and a small group might meet for coffee someday or another day. Sharing coffee or tea or a glass of wine is important, and having the space to talk together and listen carefully.
I did want to ask you, though, that you, a few years ago, created an anthology of writing. You have the book there, and you contributed a story yourself. Can you tell us about that?
I'll show you the book. It's called Women's Words, a local anthology. And on the front there, you see the Northcote Hill with the town hall and the churches on the hill, and silhouettes of some of the women who were in the group. And this cover was designed by a member of the group, and the book was published by one of the women in the group who was a publisher. One of the stories that I wrote was about my neighbour, and one of the preoccupations of women often is tidiness, cleanliness, making sure that we and our children are neat and tidy, and sometimes that can become a big preoccupation. And my neighbour was probably 5 years older than me, Italian, she was born in Italy, and not a blade of grass in her garden stood out. Everything was ordered. Her house was always meticulously tidy. I was really jealous of that, but because with 2 little boys, I could never keep the house as tidy as I would have liked. And I'm not tidy by nature, and neither is my husband. So the story is about Maria, the neighbour. I think in the book I call her Giovanna. But Maria, I came home from work one day and Maria was pacing up and down the path outside, talking loudly to herself. And I said, "What's up? What's up?" She said, "There's a burglar in the house. He's in there now." So I rushed into my house, which is next door, called the police. And when I came back, Maria had gone. And I thought, if the guy has a gun, where is she? What's going to happen? The policeman came to the door, went in the door, and Maria came rushing out, grabbed me and said, look, what's he done? What's he done? And her house was an absolute mess. They'd pulled the bed apart, they'd pulled all the books out, stuff was out of the fridge. She said, "Why did they look for something in the fridge?" Don't know. So it was big. It really was a big frightening thing. The guy had disappeared. The police caught him down in the next street. And he didn't have a gun. But I said, "Maria, come round to my place and we'll have a strong coffee." So she came round. She speaks with somewhat of a thick accent, and we walked in the door and she says, "Andrea, you didn't tell me he'd been here first."
That is very funny.
What a great story.
I'm the mother of a comedian.
You are a mother of a comedian. We know you as Danny McGinley's mum, and we both, Ange and I, love Danny. We love him for his comedy work and also his work in football. So, we're very fond of him. And yes, we can see where he gets his sense of humour, can't we, Ange?
We absolutely can. As a documentary filmmaker, I can't help but think I wish I'd documented your group's history over the past 30 odd years, because you would have seen so many changes. You said people come, people go, and it would have been a really good story to tell, following a group of women and the challenges that they have in their lives and the celebrations. Would have been a really uplifting story to tell.
Yes, it would have. But isn't this what you're doing on Broad Radio?
Yeah.
You are.
Yes, we are.
Interviewing people, you're talking to people, and a book was something that we could do. That was our medium. Mm-hmm. And books are still important, but I think what you're doing is really inspiring and really uplifting. And I'm going to do my bit to make sure everybody knows Jo Stanley's on Broad Radio, and you can get it through Facebook and YouTube. And we'll get more women of my age around to subscribe.
Oh, thanks, Andrea. That's really...
I think what you're doing is so important.
Well...
So, okay, you could document 30 years, but you're doing it now in the present.
Amazing. I'll tell you what, Andrea, neither Ange or I would be doing what we're doing without women like yourself of your generation. And I have to acknowledge that, feminism stands as it is today because of the work of the generations before us, because of women such as yourself. And we are indebted to you for that. What can you tell us just finally, what's something on International Women's Day that you look at now and you think, wow, when you were in your 20s, you really felt like that would never have happened?
Single-sex marriage is one of them. Never thought. There were people in our group who didn't even acknowledge that they were in love. They were sort of on the edges. To have women and men able to come together and share their lives together, I think is a huge change. My sister is married to her friend Claire. They're now wife and wife. And it's made, and we are a traditional Catholic family. I'm not anything now. I follow the spirit of the world. But that was a huge change in our lifetime. And I think that's really important. And it's in that space, in your space, that women can be free to be themselves. We can, and we are all different. It's just, that is the hugest change I could think of.
And a profound and joyous change. And so much to celebrate in that. And of course, as we say, there's more work to be done. What's something you would like to see change moving forward towards gender equality?
I would like to see misogyny out of Parliament, out of the men's space. I would like us to feel strong, to feel ennobled, to be who we are, and not have to fit into the shirt and tie brigade. Does that make sense?
Oh,
absolutely.
Hear, hear, sister.
Thank you, sister.
Wow.
Congratulations to all the women who are watching your programs and to all of us who are celebrating International Women's Day. I will say, go and have a look at the statue, the artwork of the Great Petition in MacArthur Park, which is a symbolic thing of the petition that women put together in 1908 in Victoria. It wasn't accepted till 1925, and Indigenous women didn't get the vote till 1962, but it was begun. And the statue itself it's inspiring. There were people before us, there are people now, and there are women coming. I have granddaughters who I have great hopes for. One of them will run the world. She runs us. She's only 4.
I love that.
Oh, yes. Andrea, it has been an absolute joy to speak with you. Oh, there it is. There's that beautiful statue. Thank you so much, Andrea. You take care. Oh, can you hear me there, Ange?
Oh, I can. I can hear you now.
I just said what an absolute legend Andrea is.
Oh, she certainly is. And this is the best job. We are meeting so many fabulous women on Broad Radio, aren't we? It's been such a wonderful short journey so far, but so many different stories from different parts of life, and it's been fantastic to be involved.
Yeah, but I think what Andrea says there is so true, that people have come before us, people will go ahead of us, but we are here this day to make a difference. And I feel so really inspired by her. She's sitting there in her suffragette colours, and you know, that's, we owe it to her to keep going. We owe it to our sons and daughters to keep going.
Yep, that is so true. And we need to know more about our history. You know, it surprises me that there are people out there who don't know what a suffragist is. It's because of those women who stared down convention that we have the right to vote. And I just wish that was studied. It was part of the school curriculum, because these are very important women who have given us the freedoms that we have today.
Well, some of those women sacrificed their lives for it. You know, it was that extreme, the fight for the vote back then. Well, we have a fight on our hands still, and I want to encourage everybody to march on Monday, 15th of March, March for Justice. Let's flood the streets. Look at that. Are we really still fighting for this shit? Yeah, are we really still? Of course. It's full of fury, that sign, and as it should be. The fact is, what we're doing when we're marching is telling the people in power that we will not stand for this anymore. It is enough. And the fact, at the end of the day, we have a vote. we ourselves have a vote. And when it comes time to vote, we can choose to vote for the current leaders or not, can't we?
That's right. 30 years ago, I marched to reclaim the night. 30 years ago. And we are still marching to be respected as human beings, to be treated as equals, to be safe inside our homes and outside of our homes. I mean, it's shameful that we have to do this. But what is changing is that men have become very much part of this conversation, because up until quite recently, it's women who have shouldered all the conversations about respect. You know, we've done it on our own. But the good thing about living in this era is that we can share that load, and men are diving in, having these really important conversations as well, and talking to other blokes. So let's march together, Jo.
Yes, let's do that. Yeah, we'll have a little Broad Radio crew in Melbourne. We're going to be marching on Monday, 15th of March, but there are marches going on all around the country, from Byron Bay to Darwin to WA to Torquay and everywhere around the country. So please get your sisters together and your brothers, and just let's all join arms and say enough is enough. You can see the website there, marchforjustice.com.au. It's got all the information as to where you can march in your part of the country. We thank you for joining us on Broad Radio as always, and I know that people have been joining us from WA this morning, which means they got up very early in the morning to do so. So we really thank you for that. And as always, please go to YouTube. It's at Broad Radio Oz. Like and subscribe, and head along to Facebook and like us as well, because that's going to really help us in these very early days. We've only been going 10 shows. Can you believe it, Ange?
It's great. I love it. It's evolving.
It is. It's true. And make sure you check out Ange's documentary called The Record, which is all about T20 cricket from last year. It's on ABC iView. And I know that the second episode went to air last night, Ange, and people loved it because it is awesome.
Yeah, can I say that? It is awesome.
It is awesome. You should say that. You worked so very hard on it, and I want everybody in the whole world to see it because it's amazing. Thanks again, Jo. Ange, for joining me on Broad Radio. We'll see you all this time next week.